Hi, my name is Kirk, and this is an introduction to my Unity multiplayer project created using Riptide networking. So this video serves as an introduction to the project and to share where I've gotten to with it at this point. And the main reason to share it at all is I wanted to contribute some of my enthusiasm and excitement about game development to other game developers that are out there. I think everybody's got their own enthusiasm and frustration and joy and despair and boundless unhinged optimism about their projects. I know I've really gotten a lot out of watching your videos, and they've helped motivate me and keep me focused, and I'm hoping that I can lay out some of my experiences as I work on mine, and hopefully we can all learn from each other. I know there's a lot of creative people out there doing very cool stuff and doing it way more competently than I'm ever going to be able to do, but hopefully there might be something novel about my experience that people get something out of. So what are we talking about? Yeah, my project. So my goal with this project has been to create really a reliable and performant foundation for the multiplayer game ideas that I have that I want to implement. I'm keeping the scope of what I think is achievable, hopefully at a level that's achievable anyway, with it wanting to be able to support just as many as like 10 players. 10 players operating in a fast-paced 60 hertz type of environment. At this point, I believe I validated that this is achievable, and that this first game that I want to make is actually a 4-player co-op game consisting of a world of good robots fighting to free themselves from their oppressive overlord robots. I am a solo dev. I wouldn't consider myself a professional engineer by any stretch, but I have worked in commercial software for a number of years, but really more on the kind of straddling the business and technology side. So I'm going to consider myself a hobbyist developer for the purpose of this discussion. And in recognizing that, I wanted to set some goals for myself with this project, and I kind of did this up front. And the reason I made some of these decisions was to help make sure that I didn't get wrapped around the axle every day deciding what I was going to take on versus what I was going to use assets for, etc. So I did decide that I would be primarily responsible for all the gameplay coding, but little niche functionality like things like foot IK. Instead of trying to reinvent foot IK, I did find an asset to help me with that. In terms of art, for better or worse, I'm planning on doing most of my own art, 3D modeling, texturing of characters. Now, the demo you see right now is 3D models that I put together with Meshy, which is an AI tool. These are placeholder models, but the models that I'm going to make myself will be based somewhat on these. I'm looking at using AI as a way of kind of doing concept art, if you will. And the reason I want to do my own art is that, at least in my experience, whenever you use assets and try to bring various assets together, they tend to not look congruent. Even if you go in and try to modify them and try to get everything in the right color palette, it just doesn't look right. So if I can somehow come up with some consistent art style and it's serviceable, then that's going to be a win for me. The other thing I'm looking to do is, when it comes to things like sound effects and animation, I will be looking to use mostly assets for that, and special effects, I'll be looking to use assets for that. But anything that really represents or would contribute the quote identity of the game and the real look of the game, that's stuff that I'm going to try to take on myself. And so again, the reason I'm being explicit about making those decisions is I want to make sure that I don't on a daily basis get wrapped around the axle reevaluating what I'm going to take on and spend a huge amount of time on something that the bang for the buck's not there. So over the years, I've worked on a lot of different multiplayer projects. I've experimented with a lot of different multiplayer solutions that have come down the pike with for Unity, and like a lot of other people, I think we've always felt that Unity was kind of wanting in terms of multiplayer support. Like probably a lot of you, I did experiment with Photon Unity networking, and I did a prototype with that. Some other things that are out there, even Photon's Bolt, and just other things that have been on the asset store that I've tried from a multiplayer solution standpoint. The thing about these solutions that I was looking for but didn't come out of the box, and it's probably unreasonable for me to think they would be, were things like client prediction and reconciliation, lag compensation. Now, I will say, like, Fishnet supposedly and you can get there from here with Fishnet, and supposedly you can maybe do that with netcode for game objects, but I don't think it's necessarily the most direct thing in the world. But and again, I've been kind of fully immersed in the Riptide library now for really a few years at this point, and so I'm pretty comfortable that I can achieve those things, or have achieved those things, with Riptide. So what is Riptide? Okay, so Riptide is not from a big company. It's from, I think Tom was still in high school, Tom Wayland. You might have seen his videos on YouTube for his networking library. And Tom describes it as a lightweight C# networking library primarily designed for use in multiplayer games. It can be used in Unity as well as in other .NET environments such as console applications. And I've definitely tested that theory, just experimentally coming up with some test projects that are just .NET projects. And it's just as easy to use there as it is in Unity, which gives you some flexibility depending on what you want to roll out in the long run. It provides all the functionality for establishing connections and sending data back and forth. It basically has a model implied in the way you use it that's really nice. It's really simple and gives you all the control in terms of what you might want to fine-tune in the way you communicate between client and server, which when you're talking about real-time, fast-paced multiplayer, you kind of need that level of control. So if you've gone through and seen some of his tutorials, you know that his demos or his tutorials started off with a setup of two different projects, a dedicated client, dedicated server. And that's exactly what I wanted to be able to do with my project. I wanted to run dedicated client and server, with the server being authoritative. So it was right up my alley when I discovered this library and then started experimenting with it. So if you've only worked with netcode for game objects and Photon, having two different projects might be a little bit different because you might be used to having it all in one. I will tell you that it's not so much that it's more work having it in two separate projects. If anything, it kind of helps narrow your perspective when you're working on the code for the one versus the other. It kind of helps you get maybe in the right mindset. I don't know if it's hard to mentally juggle sometimes when you're working in one project where the code represents host, server, and client at the same time. But I'd rather keep those two things separate. So it works for me. So Tom's tutorials plus a lot of research that I went into on all the topics related to multiplayer games, I was finally able to produce this prototype that implements all the basic needs of client-server functionality, and including things like things you need to do not just for the ideal case, but also being able to make sure that you're handling duplicate packets, out-of-order packets, you're doing all the buffering the input, all the things you need to do for lag compensation, for your hit detection, all those things. I was able to research that and get things implemented. But in addition to the multiplayer coding skills, this project's helped me to improve my other skills as well. Things like 3D modeling and texturing. Of course, those skills are relative to me, starting at 0, but and I might be on like step 2 of 1,000, but I find that I'm getting a little better each time I go in and make some new models. Even though I'm looking to use off-the-shelf animation like Mixamo animation as much as possible, it's still been a challenge that I've focused on getting better at, because even with most of those animations coming from Mixamo, getting them to actually import and map to your model and to get them to look good and behave the way you want to and combine them all in an animation controller is something of a skill set all by itself. Oh, and things like animation rigging. I love the fact that animation rigging is out of the box with Unity now, but at the same time, trying to get that to work right seems to me to be harder than it's really supposed to be. I find that it's part engineering, part black art, part brute force to actually get that to work. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I've also found that when you're working on a multiplayer game, designing and testing for performance, a lot of times you hear, oh, don't optimize too soon, just focus on getting the functionality done first. Yeah, I don't think you can do that with multiplayer. What I found is with this prototype that I'm showing right now is that there's a lot of inefficiencies behind the scenes that I need to go back and refactor, which is what I'm working on now, is a lot of refactoring of my network code. And I didn't discover those things until, because the game basically works, but there's a lot of things that need to optimize, and I only found that out from running the profiler. So I would definitely recommend learning how to use the profiler and continuing to use it as you advance in your project, because your multiplayer process really does need to run like an engine, and on both the client and the server, to stay synced up and to be able to have smooth performance. So the other thing I was going to share is that I found it very useful to spend time writing functionality that supports testing. So my clients actually have the ability to run in an automated fashion, so that I can run the client in a headless mode. That's the whole batch mode, no graphics thing. And I can run like 10 instances of it, so that I'm able to test the server and its ability to handle all the inputs that are coming in and all that processing, and make sure that that was working well. And I found that to be very, very helpful. So the video we have again here shows me running around with a buddy, just testing the map. The AI robots are just walking their pre-designated circuits. But anyway, this is where I'm at so far. Been really looking forward to starting to get this project out there and start talking about it. Looking forward to showing you how, in the future, how I iterate on it, the things I refactor, and I'll get in more detail in the future about some of the additional lessons learned, and hopefully some of this stuff can help you with your project. So with that, I'll leave you for this time, and good luck with yours. So if you have any questions about the project, feel free to throw some questions in the comments. I'll be happy to try to answer everything I can. And if you want to follow this project as it continues to progress, feel free to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.